I have been in the metro Atlanta area since around the time of the Olympics. I spent many years living in Douglas County in the Mirror Lake community, and I've been in Cobb County since 2019. But wherever I have lived, I have always been involved in the community. I often say to people, you don't have to have a lot of money. You don't have to be Instagram famous or anything like that to be involved and to make a difference. You just have to have the willingness, the desire, and then walk out of your door and get it done.
Hello, Scouts. Welcome to Local Lookout with Rodney and Bobby. We are doing our July episode. So welcome, Rodney, to the program.
Bobby, as always, brother, glad to be here. I know that we have a great guest on tonight. We have a very special guest who is running for local office, and you know that on this program we talk a lot about voting local and how local it is, and that all politics is local. So we are absolutely glad to have a local candidate on. And without further ado, Bobby, because we know those guys are so busy, I think he was out in the field today doing some work as well. So we know these guys are so busy. Let's get him on. Let's get him out of here so he can get back knocking doors and the things he have to do. So take it away, Bobby.
Absolutely. So our guest this evening, I'm going to briefly read his bio. He is Brother Michael McNeely. He's also my fraternity brother. He is running for the Mableton City Council, District 2. Brother McNeely has served on both the Cobb SPLOST Oversight Committee as well as the Board of Education's Facilities and Technology Committee, eSPLOST. So let's welcome candidate, my brother Michael McNeely, to the program. Brother McNeely, the floor is yours, good brother.
Hey, well, I just want to thank you both, Bobby, Rodney. So glad that you were doing the work that you're doing on this program, getting the message out, engaging with people, and I'm glad to be a part of that and share a little bit about me, my candidacy, and what I believe it means for the community. So first, let me say that I'm a Georgia native. I have been in the metro Atlanta area since around the time of the Olympics. I spent many years living in Douglas County in the Mirror Lake community, and I've been in Cobb County since 2019. But wherever I have lived, I have always been involved in the community. I often say to people, you don't have to have a lot of money. You don't have to be Instagram famous or anything like that to be involved and to make a difference. You just have to have the willingness, the desire, and then walk out of your door and get it done. So, when I was living out in Douglas County, I served on the West Georgia Technical College Board, served as a chair for many years, and of course, our work in Kappa Alpha Psi with mentorship and Adopt a Mile and other things that we do. I enjoyed that. And so in Douglas County, you mentioned the Cobb SPLOST Oversight Committee, the one for the county. It's an appointment by our county commissioners. So I was appointed by Commissioner Monique Sheffield, and we review all of the SPLOST related projects, and we're talking about SPLOST, the voter approved funding where taxpayers say, hey, I'm willing to pay these extra pennies for particular projects that have to be determined, leading into implementation of those projects. And in so many areas take advantage of that. And I'm also on the Board of Education SPLOST. Similarly, we're looking at those projects and related to those tax dollars, but specifically to the school system and our young people and the teachers and staff. And I've had the pleasure, I've served on the Wellstar Hospital Board. I'm on the Mableton Improvement Coalition Board, and the Cobb Collaborative does a lot in the community. So again, those things don't happen overnight, but it's because I have a desire to serve. And so it made sense to then consider running for a local position, the City Council in Mableton District 2. And I have all this knowledge and experience in the community, plus my work being a Assistant Deputy Commissioner with the Department of Juvenile Justice, about a $370 million agency that I'm an executive at, and having served in the military. And all these things, it just made sense to put my name in the hat. Because I think when you run for office, you are saying, I have the ability to be an advocate for the community, because everyone's working hard. They're taking care of their families. They're making a living. And so when they look to candidates, they want to elect someone who they know can represent them well, who understand their needs and interests, and can advocate with other government officials, with our nonprofits and our business community. And so I feel like I'm in a great position to do that. I'm continuing to tell that story to residents and say, hey, I would like you to earn your vote. I can do this job. I'm ready to do it. And you all mentioned local politics, and we've often hear the phrase about the best politics, the best government is where it's local. Because if Michael McNeely is your city councilman, hey, you can pick up the phone and call him because he's right down the road or he's in your neighborhood. So if there's an issue, if there's a concern, if there's something that we need to work on to collaboratively to get a particular project in place to help our community, then I'm right there next door versus, hey, I can't just pick up the phone and call the president. I can't pick up the phone necessarily and call the governor or congressmen and women who are serving. It's much more difficult. But those local officials that are right there with you, working hard every day and know best what you need and how to advocate, then that's the best position to be in. And so I see some people out there, they want to run for office and they want to go from nobody knowing who they are. Now they want to run for Congress. Well, what have you done along the way
Right.
to help your community? What can you say? What fruit have you shown in your own life? And if you've got that fruit, then it makes it much more, it makes much more sense to then run for office. And so that's where I am. And I look forward to continuing this journey and hope to be able to serve as a city councilman in Mableton.
Outstanding. See, this is why it's so important. We had state rep Brian Prince on last month. We've got a local rep with Brother Michael McNeely on as well. This is the importance of why we try to share this information. And you laid out a lot there. One thing I want to loop back to is when you brought up SPLOST.
Mhm.
I was able to sit in on Brother Marvin Raxton's. He had like a local meeting where he was just sharing, like what things are in the local community.
Yeah, it was
what
a
they mean.
District 3. It was a District 3 town hall that he had.
Yes,
Yep.
his town hall.
That's right.
And SPLOST is something that, when you see it on the ballot, people initially, nobody wants their taxes raised. Nobody. Everybody wants their taxes to stay the same. We don't want to pay a penny more. But you hit on something that I learned with SPLOST is the projects that it funds locally that everybody seems to want, right? You don't want to pay any more taxes, but these SPLOST initiatives that are on the ballot, they're very important. So could you just briefly share that, as well as tell the people what someone on the city council actually does?
Yeah, so related to SPLOST, I think, and to your point, I mean, who wants their taxes raised? I think what makes it palatable for voters is that they know specifically that these projects, as you said, are local. The prioritization, the list is created before you go to the ballot. So hey, if I vote for this, I know I'm getting this road improvement. I know I'm getting this park or whatever it may be. Those things. It's not some arbitrary thing where you're just taking my money and who knows what it's going to be used for. So I think that really, really helps. And it starts again locally, because if you have cities within that county, in this instance that we've got in Cobb, is you got all these Cobb County cities and the mayors and other members that are elected say, hey, this is what we're interested in based on what we're hearing from the people, and they advocate with the county, work with the county commissioners, and then they come to a final decision about what that list looks like, and of course you're voting for that. So everyone's on the same page at the end of it, because what's prioritized, what communities they're going to be focusing on. And when you're talking about SPLOST, once those initiatives are passed by the voters, that's what the elected officials have to stick to, is that list of priorities that have been determined. So that, again, I think helps people. So you talked about what members of city council do. Now, a lot of what we do, or what our elected officials do at city council, is not always glamorous. We're talking about sanitation, we're talking about planning and zoning. And depending on your city, it varies, because in Mableton, we're still going to utilize police and fire services with the county. We're not currently going to have our own police and fire. So we're dealing with planning and zoning, which is very important, and sanitation, and we also were looking at parks as well. And so those are things that are very important. When you talk about blighted properties, you drive past a building and it looks a mess. The property owners haven't taken care of it well. Planning and zoning allows you oftentimes to hold business owners accountable through that process. And so those are very much important to residents every day, and a big part of what we're doing in Mableton and what a lot of cities do locally. And again, when you have your local officials, they're there to be able to talk to you about it and to pass a budget related to the particular functions in your city. Their business licenses, there's franchise fees and things that are collected by cities oftentimes, and those have to be managed properly. And you want good stewards of those dollars by the taxpayers from people like your city councilmen and women.
Thank you for that information. You once were you were someone that actually switched parties.
Mm-hmm.
And I would like for you to just share your feelings on that. What made you decide to change? Just share your thoughts on where you feel like the country stands as a party, as between the two parties right now. I'd like for you to share that and just kind of expound on that.
Well, sure. Anything that's man-made is not perfect. So whether you're talking about a school system, whether you're talking about a particular business, political parties, they're not perfect. And so I think for most people, when they choose a party, they're understanding that there's not perfection in it, but they lean where they feel that they are most supported and where they recognize their beliefs. They see those beliefs being mirrored in the party and the elected officials. So I have been a Republican and a Democrat. I wanted to make sure in everything I do that I had as much information as I could to make good informed decisions and understand the realities of the world, that even when one person's a part of one party, another's a member of another party in government, you got to figure out, or you should be figuring out, how you can work together for the common good. Um, but some of the things that I saw when I was a Republican that initially drew me, I was like, hey, I believe in a strong national defense. I've served in the military. I want to have strong national defense so we can defend our right to be free. And I said there was a lot of focus on individuals and who they are and their ability to do a lot of things. So when I saw that, I thought, okay, yes, I believe in the individual. Look at what we did as Black men and women through time, and elevating out of our circumstances. It wasn't easy, but we were able to do it because we're strong. We saw leadership like Dr. King and Malcolm X and others, and you see that strength, and you say, those circumstances they found themselves in and what they were fighting for are not perfect, but you see the strength of it. So when I initially saw Republicans, I said, oh, they believe in individual responsibility. So I'm thinking about that is, hey, we can all achieve. But what I found too many times is that the element of helping people when they're down, helping people get in a better place was missing, and it took some time. But I'll say that in the most recent years, with the rise of MAGA, I just don't know how you keep supporting that. I mean, we've thrown the Constitution out the window. We are decorum and fundamental respect is gone. So while I can work with anyone, and there are different types of Republicans out there, I had to make that shift to a party that I felt really cared for people. Not perfect, but the focus was on people and making sure that each individual was represented, and seeing that in policies and how we spend taxpayer dollars. And that's where I am today. And of course, with these city council races are nonpartisan, but we all have beliefs and we all have leanings, and I think that has to be a part of your collective and how you communicate with people.
I totally agree with you, and there's no judgment either way. I just find it amazing when people say, well, I'm a conservative, and then first of all, you're not 100% of anything. You're not 100% liberal. You're not 100% conservative. It depends on what you value and how it affects you personally. And we've gotten so far away from it. I think people just latch on to a name and just brutalize the other, but they're not listening. I mean, we all have conservative views. We all have what are considered to be liberal views. Which one you lean more on is really where you are. And we get into these rabbit holes of trying to find the most purest candidate, of well, they said this, or they once believed that. It's nonsense. And so I'm just for you to share that perspective, I think was very important, and you laid it out eloquently, I think, for people to understand your perspective. I share that. I share your view, and it's interesting because myself, Mr. Butler, we're veterans also. Representative Prince, who was on last month, he's also a veteran. It's like, so we're having Black veterans on this show, which I think is great for
Yes.
people to see and understand. Like, look at the faces of us who took that oath, to defend the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic. You're looking at them, and what we see today just is an abomination, I think, of what we're all supposed to be standing for. So I'm confused as to where the country stands right now. I'm really not confused. I should restate that. I see where the country is choosing to stand. But as you mentioned earlier, the Constitution is just being thrown out like a wet piece of newspaper. It's not, you're not upholding what supposedly the ideals stand for in this country, and it just speaks to where we are right now. I just wanted to, one final question. I know, is there anything else you want to share regarding your platform and about your particular views before we
Yeah,
let you go?
yeah, absolutely. So, Mableton is now the largest city in Cobb County, approaching 80,000 individuals. And so there's a lot of opportunity. If the majority of the people who voted in favor of the city, hey, they wanted a focus, they wanted to focus on the city, on the area that's consisting of the city of Mableton. And there's a lot of work to be done. And so my platform involves these things: smart redevelopment. So how do we invest with public and private partnerships so that we can have quality businesses coming into the community? So when people want to go out to a nice restaurant, they want to shop at a quality store, or they need services local to them, whether it be healthcare related or otherwise. That if you have smart redevelopment, you're bringing quality businesses in, which means more tax revenue, and then you can use that tax revenue to do a lot more. But we have to be attractive. We have to be able to get rid of these blighted properties. We have to have a entertainment district. So one of the areas along Six Flags corridor there is a prime place where we can have an entertainment district. And when you do those things, it helps with housing quality, because we've got some apartments in the area that are deplorable, that we need to improve, and we need the resources to better do that, and also implement planning and zoning. So those are just a few examples as a part of smart redevelopment that has to happen, and the individuals who are city councilmen and women have to lead the way along with the mayor to get those things done. Public safety. I'm a public safety professional. Before I was an executive with the Department of Juvenile Justice, I was a police officer, and so I understand the importance of residents being safe, business owners and visitors having an environment where they can feel safe, where they don't have to worry about what's going to happen, that they know that they're protected, and they have a quality evening. If they're going out or they're conducting business locally, they can do that. So that's very important. And then senior and veteran services. So we have a lot of those services at the county level, but we need to leverage those and bring them more locally. So to Mableton. So like, for example, we have a senior citizens center near to Marietta. Very nice, but it's a half hour without a lot of traffic to get there. And so we want to bring some of those resources home to Mableton for senior citizens as well as veterans. In fact, there's a veteran center coming along that Six Flags corridor that is full housing, kitchenette, services, mental health and medical services right in that building with tunnels for towers. I don't know if you've ever heard of that organization, but they're coming. So we want to leverage what we have at the county, bring it home locally. You look at grants that we can further bring resources and really ensure that we're respecting our veterans who live with us locally in Mableton and our senior citizens. And then youth education initiatives. Now, city council individuals, we're not in the business of education day to day. We have school board members for that, but we should be partnering. So go the schools, so go the community and the schools. They go hand in hand. So we want to be partners with our education leaders. So we're doing all we can to make sure our young people are growing up with the knowledge and the skills they need to have successful lives for themselves and their families. And then finally, fiscal responsibility. I mean, no matter what you're running for, you should make sure that you are a good steward for taxpayer dollars. What's your priorities? How are you spending? Are you making the best decisions, and are you communicating what you're doing with residents and making sure that they're a part of the process? You got to partner with this. That's why they elect you, and they need to know what you're doing, why you're doing it, how you're doing it, and our elected officials have to be good stewards. So those are the highlights of the related to the platform I have, and I'm communicating that to the men and women throughout every community here in District 2 in Mableton, and look forward to doing that because I know how important it is, and I want to put the voters in the best position to make the decisions they need to make, and hopefully they select me as their city councilman.
Well, Mr. McNeely, candidate McNeely, we certainly appreciate your time. Before we go, please put out there how can people support your campaign?
Yes, so my website is McNeely. It's McNeely, McNeely for Mableton.com. And when you go there, there'll be some biographical information about me. There'll be obviously donation opportunity because we got to raise money to get the message out. There's opportunity to join the team, which means you can come and volunteer and serve with us. And then there's updates along the way. My press release is there currently. I've gotten some endorsements. The Democratic municipal organization has endorsed me and others, so we'll continue to put that information out. But I think most importantly, because I talk about communication and making sure voters know who you are and you're sharing ideas, there is a phone number there that comes directly to me, and there's an email. So I encourage people to call me or email me if they have questions or concerns, they want to learn more, because I tell my team at work, I rather over communicate than under communicate. In other words, I want to make sure we're on the same page, there's no misunderstanding, and that we're able to move forward together once we're on that same page. So I encourage them to come McNeely for Mableton.com. I look forward to hearing from residents and friends, and look forward to what we can do together when we're working together as a community.
Candidate Michael McNeely, running for District 2, Mableton City Council. Brother McNeely, outstanding job. We certainly appreciate your time. Have a great day, brother.
Okay, you all too. Thank you for having me today.
Thank you. Thank you for coming on.
Appreciate you.
Thank you.
All right. Well, that was outstanding. Brother McNeely, I knew would do a great job coming on with us today. Again, I was at his inaugural, campaign celebration a couple weeks ago. So I know he'll do a great job. And if elected, I know he will do a outstanding job representing the city of Mableton. So as you've heard him laid out, a few things. And I'm sorry I didn't get a chance to.
No, it's cool. I didn't have any questions. No, that's why I didn't.
Okay.
I didn't have any questions. I know that right before the him putting out how people can reach him and then before he gave out his contact information. But no, I didn't have any questions for him, Bobby. The only thing I was actually going to say, and I could just say it now because I had no questions, other than his branch. I couldn't remember his branch of service.
You know what? He didn't say. I want to say he's Army. I think he's Army or Air Force. I could be wrong. I don't want to misstate which branch he served.
Right. I was definitely going to ask his branch because, like I said, I wasn't sure, and I didn't see it in my homework, on him. So I was going to ask him that because I know you know him personally. I don't know him personally, but yeah, he's the only thing I was going to say was that just to reiterate to the people is that when I was going to challenge, and I do challenge the voters of Mableton to go back and listen to his introduction. When you listen to this brother's introduction, I'm one that, the West Metro of Atlanta is growing big time. You know that I think you're in South Cobb as well, and that kind of thing. And so it's growing. And so listening to him, when you look at his intro, he talks a lot about, the different places where he lived and who he's working with. So we know that this is going to be a brother who's going to be able to work with, instead of always just competing with each other, to work with the other municipalities and the other counties and the other commissions, to get the job done, for the, for the citizens of Mableton. And the only other thing I was going to say, Bobby, is that to the citizens of Mableton, his constituency, is that, look, he is a veteran. Now, again, we've been talking a lot. Bobby, you spoke on it. You briefly spoke on it, about how we had, State Rep Prince, on, and we've had others on who are veterans. And I'm kind of reminding people that, it wasn't so long ago, in our lifetime, when we were, young adults, Bobby, it wasn't that long ago that if you were not a veteran, it was very difficult to get elected for any office in this country,
Mm-hmm.
especially state and higher, but even local office, because you bring a certain, kind of ethics, values, and
Right.
ethos to the, to what is so sorely needed right now in our politics. And so I just want to let people know that, look, I'm not saying you got to be a veteran to run for local politics, for politics in general, but I do think that it is a plus. I think that we might need to get back to that kind of thing, and I think that it might put us in a in a better place. So anyway, but his brother definitely checked the block as a veteran. He's a obvious true veteran. He wear it in his heart, no doubt about it. So outstanding guest, Bobby. But I know we got two other outstanding segments for the show tonight, and I think what we have our Civics 101 lesson first. So look, without further
Yeah.
ado, I'm gonna let you go ahead on and jump right into our Civics 101 lesson. It's a doozy.
Yeah. Boy, I tell you, we could talk about the Supreme Court's decision. Really, it was about universal federal injunctions about birthright citizenship. That's a rabbit hole we can talk about later on. It's not a good decision. It's basically giving more power to the president than what he needs regarding that situation. And we've talked about this before, with the caveat being that, hey, if he wants to redefine birthright citizenship, let's keep in mind his first wife was not born here, which means his children, I'm talking about Eric, Don Jr. and Ivanka, their mother was not born here. And then when you get to his third wife, now with Melania, that means Barron Trump, his mother was not born here either. And he's trying to be slick with it in terms of having, as long as one of the parents is born here in the United States, then they're an American citizen. Nothing has changed, by the way, with the Supreme Court's decision. Nothing has changed as far as being born here. You're still an American citizen. You're still a birthright citizen. But it's creating some issues down the road that can be brought up. And remember, too, also with the felon's mother, she was not born here as well. She's also an immigrant. So there's all kind of so many contradictions to this stuff that it gets down a rabbit hole. But I wanted to focus on how many times the president has called in the National Guard. And I wanted to speak from something that I went to go get my own knowledge about. It's only been 7 times. Let me read out the 7 times that has happened. We didn't have what was called a National Guard back during the Civil War, but there was a authority used back during the Civil War, basically to suppress Lincoln federalized the state militias of the Union to muster combined fighting force of men at the start of the war. That was the first time, right? The second time, this is the one I want to really focus on, is the desegregation of Southern schools, specifically Little Rock 9 after the Brown versus Board of Education decision, and when it was initially stated by the Supreme Court to desegregate schools. That's what I want to circle back to. I just want to read out the other times that this happened real quick. Dr. King's March from Selma to Montgomery. We had National Guard troops in there because of what was happening with Governor Wallace. The Detroit riots in 1967, the National Guard was called. The riots following the assassination of Dr. King in 1968, and the Cuban refugee crisis in 1980, and the one that's most familiar to us was the 1992 LA riots after the police officers were acquitted regarding the beating of Rodney King. Those are the most recent times up until most recently, when the National Guard was called in over the head of Gavin Newsom in the state of California regarding protests, which were not any way, shape, or form. They were not out of hand the way they want to describe it. Things were not escalating until he actually called in the National Guard and the Marines. Okay, the Marines are not a police force. They're not trained for civil disobedience. That's not what they're trained for. It's not what the Marines are here for. And so that was the most recent time. But I want to go back to the desegregation of schools. I went purposely. I took my two sons to Memphis first, so that we can go to the Lorraine Hotel and see, where everything took place with Dr. King. And I purposely set aside a day to drive to Little Rock, Arkansas. We wanted to go straight to Little Rock Central High School. This is around Thanksgiving, so the school was not open, but it is still a functioning high school. Little Rock Central is still a functioning high school, and it's now predominantly Black. So when we went, and we took a lot of pictures there, my sons and I, we just took a lot of pictures there where everything happened. There's an exhibit. There's a cultural center right up the road from the school. And I sat there and just listened. And for the longest time, Rodney, I had it wrong. I thought that the National Guard was called in, and that's how the students were allowed to go into school. I had it wrong. It was actually Governor Backus, who was the governor of Arkansas during that time, when the Supreme Court had said that in the Brown versus Board of Education, that desegregation of schools was unconstitutional. And basically, from that point on, schools have been desegregated. Well, we know what happened with the Little Rock Nine. They couldn't get into school. They were harassed. And these were some of the best and brightest students in that area. And you might say, well, why do they want to go there? Well, it's because that was $1 million school built during that time. And it had all the nicest facilities. It had its own stadium for sports. It had the best of everything. So things that they couldn't get at the schools where they were. So when they took the opportunity under this Supreme Court decision to go, they were met with so much hostility. And you've seen the videos. It's embarrassing. It's shameful what they had to go through. But I thought all that time that's what the National Guard was called in for, to let them in. No, I didn't know that President Eisenhower called the governor and said, listen, the Supreme Court has made a decision and you need to let them in. And the governor's like, nope, states' rights. States' rights were not going to start at the high school level or the middle school level because I'm going to have angry parents. We'll start it at the elementary school level. We'll start there. And there was no timetable. That was the only thing about the decision. They didn't give a timetable on when it was to start. So during that period of time, when he was basically being, basically bucking the system, and Eisenhower told him, nope, you got to let them in. He then called in the, I believe it was 82nd Airborne to come in. And he knew back during that time, when you held your rifles, they had the bayonets on the end. And so they knew that any mob, any crowd that was going to come around and try to harass them during that time, they were going to be face to face with that bayonet at the end of that rifle. Not only that, knowing that they can shoot at will, in that case, if they felt threatened. So that's what allowed them to go to school. And most people don't realize that when they actually went, because when the decision was laid down and they were being harassed, they actually homeschooled for a couple of weeks because they couldn't get in. And so finally, when the 82nd Airborne showed up for them to come in, and make sure this 82nd and not 101st, but when they showed up, a lot of the students checked out, and they checked out when y'all remember back in the day when you had to go to school and you checked out, you might say sick or, leaving early, whatever. I'm gonna tell you straight up, they checked out and they wrote the word nigger on the reasons why they were checking out, why they were leaving. They didn't want to be in the same classroom with them, which again is so shameful. They actually lost a year of school because they just didn't want to go to school with someone Black. Those 9 outstanding students. And so when it came time for them to graduate, imagine years later, when it was time to graduate, they were getting letters from their fellow students saying, don't come to the graduation because you're just going to mess things up. There's going to be a lot of hostility. It's going to ruin their graduation. When I say ruin, it's like you never know what parent might get rowdy, and that sort of thing. They went through so much, the Little Rock Nine. And I don't think it's talked about enough, what they went through. We know about what happened also with Ruby Bridges, as a child, just trying to go to school. And all these things that are just, they're really shameful in our history. And we know that there's a lot that the history books don't want to teach in American history anymore. They want to get away from that. They've managed to hijack what DEI is, what woke is, what Black Lives Matter is, what CRT is, and make it all something bad. Like it's a problem. It's them. They're the reason why something is wrong in America. It's brutal how they do these things. But that Little Rock Nine doesn't get enough talk, and realizing the impact of the Supreme Court, and that's one of the things I want to make sure I mention. The impact of the Supreme Court during that time to come to that decision, that was in the 1950s. Now here we are 70 years later, right? And we're trying to turn back the clock. Maybe not necessarily on desegregating schools, but we're trying to turn back the clock on an ugly period in America. And people just have to stay woke. I don't care who gets offended by the term, because that can apply to anybody who understands this nation's history and the path that we move forward, and seeing how this Supreme Court, because now you have a more conservative Supreme Court, the impact of that and how it's having on our country in these type of decisions. So I wanted to just circle on that. And Rodney, I want to get your thoughts. What do you think, brother?
So you know the deal, man. They act like it is, ancient history for one thing. And, Ruby Bridges, she still lives.
Yeah.
In fact, she's not some old lady. I think she still goes around and do speeches and that kind of thing. I think she's only maybe in her late 70s or something like that.
Yeah.
And the thing about it is our youth kind of buys off into it, Bobby. They talk about, oh, that was 100 years ago. That was ancient history. And it's just not. It was just not that long ago. But one of the things, because to make sure that we understand when we're talking about this topic of the Civics 101 lesson that you're trying to, teach people about, is that power from the president, to mobilize the National Guard, is not something that is used, as you can see, that often. And when it is, it tend to be used to protect people who are, those guardsmen, to protect people who are just exercising their civil rights, or to, protect someone's or a group of people's civil liberties, right? And so, but yet it's now being used for something different. It is being used to police. And Bobby, and that's why I want to reiterate that I think it is important. I promise you, good and well that if Donald Trump was a veteran, that there is no way that he would, mobilize National Guardsmen and Marines to do what he's having them to do, because it not only is it just not the proper thing to do historically, but it puts them in all sorts of ethical dilemmas. Many of the people, okay, who are in the military, right? Mm-hmm. They come out of the neighborhoods of the same people that he is wanting to kick out, get rid of them, separate families and all of that stuff, right? So I think it's a serious ethical dilemma. I would hate to be presently in a command structure, where I'm having to tell young soldiers to go back home and tell your cousins to get up out of here. It's different if you're local police, and it shouldn't even be local police. It's a federal issue, and it should be ICE. Even deputizing federal and state police and giving them the police power of a federal agency like ICE is also an ethical dilemma in that, but it's also wrong. It is also something that we should not be doing. The other administrations, they did this without, calling up the National Guard, without deputizing local and state police units and forces. They did it. This guy is trying to start something,
Yeah.
We know what the hidden agenda is, Bobby. We talked about Project 2025, Agenda 47. We talked about these things. I mean, I hate to keep saying, we talked about them, but we did.
We
And the
did.
bottom line is, it's on the agenda. And last I read, that administration is somewhere, right about 40%, into Project 2025, and this man has not even been in office 6 months yet, but yet they're about 40% there. So but this is part of Project 2025. But yeah, just reiterating the lesson, the Civics 101 lesson, is that this is something that has not been done very much. Calling up the National Guard, and now even calling up active duty Marines. Marines don't have a National Guard; they have a reserve, and I don't think that was the Marine Reserve he called up.
No.
And as you can see, Bobby, recent history, we're talking about the ones that you named were pretty much from like 1964, to 1992, so very, very recent. And it's just, I think it might come back to bite him, actually.
Yeah, I mean, he's proven to be so lawless, and so destructive, really reckless. Maybe that's the better term, just reckless with what he does. And I just the ramifications on this country, on what's happening right now, are large. They're huge, and you just want people to be aware of where we currently stand in this country and where things are.
Okay.
I wanted to focus on before we get through our hot topic. Right?
Okay. Before we get to it, let's go.
Before we get to it, I want to bring this up. So you've heard me say this numerous times, and I said you don't hear as much noise about Haiti,
that's right,
Sudan, the Congo, right? Well, I was close to giving this administration some credit for allegedly interfering and trying to negotiate a deal with Rwanda and the Congo, right? Mm-hmm. Until I read the details, right? Some of the highlights of the deal, right? And once again, the devil's in the details. So this negotiation basically allows the United States, or will allow us, to come in and to get some mineral rights. Mineral rights. Remember, we've heard that discussed before in other countries. So I'm saying to myself, of course you want, the people of Rwanda, or the militias in Rwanda and the Congo to have peace, because that civil war has been going on. It's basically genocide that's been going on over there. And you haven't heard much talked about it. We still have a problem in Haiti, and we still have a problem in Sudan. What I found was ironic is, if I'm not mistaken, there's a travel ban for people coming from the Congo. So I'm thinking to myself, like, hold on, wait a minute. People are falling for this again, where it's like you get the splash of supposedly there's a deal negotiated through the United States. But then when you read it again, it's like, so we're basically allowing ourselves to be able to grab our hands onto mineral rights in the Congo. We want to be able to steal from them, just like other countries have been doing recently. We just want to catch up and steal some of those precious minerals that are enriched there. And, I had to step back. I was almost about to give them credit for this. I was almost about to give them credit until you read it. And then it's like, yeah, here we go. It makes sense. Now I see what this is really about. Did you see that?
Yeah, because I know you was going to, you wanted to talk about it on the platform here, and and like you said, you did a little bit more digging and reading and stuff like that. So I'm glad you did. But yeah, we can't lose focus. And Bobby, as always, I always say, man, I appreciate you keeping us on top of what is happening, in the predominantly black countries. Of course, the continent, Africa, obviously the 54 countries there, but also throughout Haiti and throughout the Caribbean, and throughout the world. So we appreciate that, and we know that you're gonna always hone in on that. But yeah, it's amazing that, like you said, you was on the cusp of giving the administration kudos, but it's just always something sinister, or always something that's beneath the surface especially, with those countries, because like he called them S-hole countries. I'm sure that black people will never ever forget that. And and I heard a challenge the other day, even I think it was yesterday or day before yesterday. Someone said, find me a white person who has been in this country, a European, white Anglo-Saxon, whatever you want to call it, person that has been deported. I was like, one that's been here, not somebody that's, coming here and they get turned around, but someone that's been here 20 years, 25 years, 15 years, and I'm like, man, I just didn't think about that. Yes, we do think about, we know who's being targeted, but it's like when that person said that, for some reason, it's just kind of, I don't know, it just kind of just brought a whole light on, yeah, want somebody to find someone. And so that's what I'm going to use, Bobby, anytime I run across any kind of platform or anything out there on social media or wherever, of people trying to dismiss that it's not race-based and ethnically based what they're doing, what this administration is doing as far as immigration. I'm going to just say, okay, name me one white person,
Right,
and
right.
see if they can do it,
And see how many, well, and see how the rationale changes from that point.
Exactly. So so it's just something.
And I'm watching, of course, what happens with Burkina Faso and General Traore.
Yes.
So I'm just gonna watch how that situation plays itself out. But I am watching, and I hope that he is very careful. That's all I'm gonna say. Be very careful. We know what you're trying to do.
Yep.
And I'm not against what he's trying to do. Just be careful. Be
Well,
careful who you align yourself with.
Yep.
In this quest. So just keep on your toes, General Traore. That's all I got to say.
Well, we know, look, the motto of this show is we're going to keep looking out. And Bobby, we know that you're going to keep an eye on that and so many other things. So we appreciate you for that.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Yep. So we'll wrap up with our hot topic.
Yes, sir.
And I wanted to focus on this because I've been frustrated with the media in covering this. It's the Iran nuclear deal that was signed under President Obama. So I'm going to read out to you just some of the things that were some of the misconceptions. It's the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, the JCPOA, which was signed in January of 2016. The participants who all agreed to this was, of course, Iran, China, Russia, France, the UK, Germany, the EU, and the United States, obviously, right? Terminated in 2018 by Trump, okay? Nothing in place for it. You hear the critics, and we know which side the critics are coming from, and they say, oh, it wasn't a good deal. Well, it had these sunset provisions in it. It wasn't completely stripping them from the ability to get uranium, right? But if you have a deal in place and they were actually complying by it for 2 years, they were not enriching uranium to build a nuclear weapon. Over those 2 years that they had agreed to on the deal. If you have someone that's complying by it and you just say, well, I don't like it. We know you don't like it just because it was President Obama, the one that did it. That's just bottom line. So what you had the opportunity to do was, if you didn't like these sunset provisions, extend them. Extend it out, right? Or add to it. If they're complying by it, why are you ripping it up? Give me a valid reason why you're ripping it up. What are you putting in place? You didn't put anything in place, right? So now when I hear him saying like, well, we had a deal for them, they should have took the deal. They already had accepted a deal. They were already under compliance under the deal that they had under the agreement under President Obama, the JCPOA, right? And you see those countries that all agreed to it during that time. So now we don't even know what the term obliterate means anymore. We know what it is by definition, but according to him, we obliterated their opportunity. It's going to set them back years. Then when you find out when the inspectors go in, no, we didn't. We didn't obliterate them at all. We didn't even really reach underneath where the stuff was, right? To the extent that he said we did. And it didn't set them back by years. Really only set them back by a few months. So we always say, well, and they love to go to this. Well, we can't have Iran, who is the largest sponsor of terror. We can't have them with their hands on a nuke. Okay, fine. I'm going to go back again and ask you, In 2016, when they signed the agreement and were complying by it, why did you rip it up? Why? That's the thing that gets me. Why? If they were complying by it, like I've said before, why did you rip it up? If you say you didn't like it, what did you put in place? Because good luck when you're talking to North Korea or any of these other hostile nations as we perceive them to try to have a nuclear deal, and you didn't honor the one that was in place. Why are they going to listen to you? Why? It wouldn't surprise me if he goes back and announces that we have a deal, if we can get one. Announce we have a deal, and it's very similar to the one that President Obama already had in place, or it's the exact same one, right? And it says, look what I did. That's what I've said this before. That's what this guy does, branding. He brand names stuff and makes it look like something he created. No, he didn't. This is what was already in place. Just like he did with the border stuff with Biden, saying, oh, we got a deal. And it was basically the same thing that they had already agreed to under Biden, right? As far as placing troops at the border. It was the same thing. So, and the other countries said, oh, we didn't change anything. We just basically went back to what we already had in place, what the agreement we already had. So this is the kind of stuff that he does. There's a misconception. So let me just briefly run through these misconceptions.
Go ahead.
The Iran deal included a U.S. payment of $150 billion to Iran. So the $150 billion figure, I'm reading this, by the way, from the Center for Arms Control and Non-Proliferation. This is where I'm getting this credit from. $150 billion is wrong, right? The amount of money Iran could access from these foreign reserves is about $100 billion. Of this amount, about half of it was tied up in Iranian foreign debts. So as Treasury Secretary Jacob Lew testified before Congress, the actual amount that Iran will be able to use is about $50 billion. All right. This is the other misconception. The Iran deal included a ransom payment for hostages. No. This is what they try to claim, that the money that we sent them got our hostages released. It says so. This is under Lisa Gresh. She was a legal advisor for the Department of State. She testified before Congress that the $1.7 billion was comprised of $400 million that Iran had placed in the U.S. Foreign Military Sales Trust Fund and $1.3 billion in interest. So at the time of the Iran deal negotiations, the U.S. and Iran were involved in a legal arbitration case for the amount of interest the U.S. owed on this fund, right? So as for the fact that the payment coincided with the hostages release, Suzanne Maloney of the Brookings Center explains that the settlement and the prison release were two separate channels. Once the settlement of the claim was determined, the U.S. simply did not issue payment until the separately negotiated prison release was completed. This is what she testified in Congress. Two more things. The misconception about breakout time is the time needed to develop a nuclear bomb. So you've heard this brought up as well, So under the JCPOA, Iran's breakout time is evaluated to be at least 1 year. Remember, we have inspectors going in to check this stuff, right? That's how we know they were in compliance. There's an important distinction between the breakout time and the amount of time needed to develop a credible nuclear weapon. A country's breakout time is the time required to produce enough weapons-grade uranium or plutonium for one nuclear weapon. For one. The International Atomic Energy Agency estimates this amount to be approximately 25 kilograms of highly enriched uranium, 90% or more of enrichment. However, if Iran had the required amount of enrichment level of uranium for a nuclear bomb, it would still need time to develop a viable weapon. This includes miniaturizing a nuclear weapon to be attached to a missile and producing a missile that functions accurately and reliably. Both of these developments are challenging and time-consuming. Furthermore, one untested nuclear weapon is not enough for a credible deterrent. So even if they had got that far and to test it, it's not even tested, it's not credible, right? It's not credible for a deterrent. The last thing, the Iran deal, this is a misconception. The Iran deal stopped Iran's nuclear program. The objective of the agreement, the JCPOA, was to verifiably constrain Iran's nuclear program and impede progress towards a nuclear weapon. However, the agreement does permit Iran to keep a comparably small amount of monitored low-enriched uranium. Thus, the Iran deal does not extinguish all Iranian nuclear activity, but constrains and restricts Iran's ability to obtain a nuclear weapon. So those are the highlights about the misconceptions regarding the Iran deal. And you're going to hear, again, the talking heads that want to demonize it, again, because it was President Obama's deal. And I just gave you all the countries that agreed to it. So couldn't have been that bad, in that area, that all agreed to it, and they were in compliance of it. So we know, and this is, what I certainly think is what happened is this is all coordinated. Yep. This is all coordinated with Bibi Netanyahu, right? They've been in touch the whole time during Joe Biden's presidency. They stayed in touch. When he came here, he spoke to Congress, and where did he go after that? He went straight to Mar-a-Lago, right? They've been coordinating this the whole time. This is why he did the excessive bombings in Gaza, which is still going on, which you still have people getting humanitarian aid, still being killed, just trying to get some food. This is why this stuff is still going on. I keep repeating and telling people the real problem is Bibi Netanyahu. That has been the problem with Israel. We're listening to him say, and he's been doing it since the 90s. He's been saying how Iran is so close to having a nuclear weapon, so close, because he knows he has our backing, right? That if he decides to do something, he's good, right? He's trying to stay in office politically because he represents a far right-wing party. He's deeply unpopular with the people of Israel. And as a result of his actions, this is why we're mimicking what he said is going on. But again, you don't have any proof of that. And again, there was an agreement in place that was stripped away, and nothing was put in place for it. So I want to make sure we make that clear, that when he goes off and says like, well, we had a deal, they should have signed a deal. They already had a deal. Yep. And they were complying with it. So what you're doing now is you're trying to make up for what you did 7 years ago, right? And then here we are now on the brink of possibly, and we hope it doesn't get this far, the brink of possibly war. And you've already heard China and Russia basically tell Iran, hey, if they destroyed it, don't worry about it. We'll send you some. We'll send you some of ours, right? So where are we going with this? It's like you did all of this for, you could say for nothing, but you did it for show. He wants to be a wartime president so bad. He wants to win a Nobel Prize. He wants to, everything is a reality TV show with this guy. And he's doing it at the risk of American lives. So, and playing with our soldiers, we talked about that with us serving. So yep. I want to make sure I just put that out there and let the facts flow where they may. But that is something that's not talked about enough in the media, in my opinion, about their compliance under the JCPOA. And when it was stripped away, hey, they basically were like, you know what? If they're gonna not honor what we were trying to do, we're just gonna do what we want to do anyway.
This guy is, in my opinion, Bobby, this guy is almost running he's almost having a reality show with him and Barack Obama, starring, Donald Trump and Barack Obama. Mm-hmm. Only thing is Barack Obama don't even know that he's in the reality show. You don't know he's in it. Yeah. You don't even know he's in it. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. I mean, we know he's in it, but you know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. And that is what this guy is doing. Like you're saying, he want to be. And the thing about it is, but what they're operating on the fact that they know that most Americans are not going to go and read, what you just read, or any kind of anything that was published similar to what you read. So they know America's not going to read, the majority. They know they know that many Americans just operate under sheer fear. Sheer fear is what they operate on. But if you look at it, it has all the makings that what he and Bibi Netanyahu is doing is almost it looks like a criminal enterprise, man. It literally on the surface.
War criminals.
Yeah, it looks. It's you want RICO? Well, here it is. But and it is wild. But and we know, Bobby, that, and we talk about it on here a lot, that so much in the news, so much of what they tell you is propaganda. Even all the bomb, or the bombs, the big bomb that they've dropped on on Iran here a few days ago is you know all you want to get on there and claim victory. We saw what happened, when President Bush got on that naval ship,
Mission
back
accomplished.
and said mission
Mm-hmm.
accomplished, and we see what happened. We had the longest war after that. We had the longest war in American history, but they want to, they're so eager to, to get a win, so eager to come out, like Barack Obama did, Donald Trump, that is, after, after the comedy thing that they had. What is it called?
The White House Correspondents'
The White
Dinner.
House Correspondents'
Mm-hmm.
Dinner. Boy, Barack Obama is laughing it up, but at the same time, giving orders to capture, Osama
Bin
bin
Laden.
Laden, and then come
Yep.
out the next day and say that because he's a TV man, he want to up that, he want to one up that so badly,
Yep.
that you're coming out, talking about, mission accomplished, basically, with the bombs in Iran. But here's the thing, Bobby, before I let you finish the segment out, and that is, look, you and I both are veterans. We know that, propaganda is one of the first tools of war, right?
Mm-hmm.
And of course, the media is used a lot to promote that propaganda. And so, but here's the thing that I know. I know that Israel, I'm almost sure of this, Israel shut down TV over there. After the bombing and after all that stuff, they shut down the TV. And also, it seems like Netanyahu and Trump was really, really, really upset, with Iran afterwards. If you, as he said, use some of the words, if you bomb the hell out of them and you did all this stuff, then why are we shutting down the media in Israel? Okay.
Right.
And then why are you two guys are so freaking mad? So, I'm just gonna leave it. I don't have any intel. I wish I did, but I'm just gonna leave it at that, Bobby. It doesn't look like victory to me.
No.
So
It doesn't look like obliterated to me.
exactly.
And I'm glad you said that, because about what you mentioned about them trying to look like President Obama when he came down. They did the same exact. I told somebody, I said, he's trying to do the same thing that President Obama did when he came down and announced that we had captured and killed Osama bin Laden, and then walked down that aisle. He did the same thing. He got that same camera angle, and he comes and walks out there with J.D. Vance and I believe Marco Rubio was with him, and just claiming like, yeah, we did it. We destroyed Iran's nuclear capabilities. We've obliterated them. And then when you find out, when the inspectors go in, it's like, no, you didn't. You didn't. It's like you said, it's like you're so quick to want to get the win. And one thing he did on social media too that angered me. Well, one of many. I don't follow him at all,
Right.
but I see stuff that'll pop up, that somebody may share.
Exactly.
When he mentioned too where our bombers landed safely in Missouri. Rodney, why are you telling where the bomber planes land? Why are you giving any location as to where they are? It's that
Bobby,
kind of.
what? If they weren't successful, as you and I, two veterans, believe they weren't as successful as they are claiming that they were in Iran, when they dropped the bombs. You know what? We got to remember, it's probably thanks to the signal chat. Chat.
Yeah.
Again, they might have been talking and saying everything. This guy is letting, these bombers, flew out west. They went west,
Right.
and these went east. And
Right.
it's just like, wow, man. I mean, and I know that people, they want to, I don't know who they're trying to, I don't know who they're trying to I don't know, get on board with this. Maybe it's the young kids or something that plays video games. But even if you're not a veteran, man, they had to make you squirm in your seats. These people are literally talking about, capability, how many bombers went out. These are sorties. They fly these sorties, and they now you just letting people know, even the people in the country, man, that live out, in the Midwest and stuff, and they see that now. It's like they look at it a whole different way.
Right.
They don't see it as a training. It's like, oh, I don't think there's a training exercise this time. You know what I'm saying? It's just wild and weird, man. But I don't even think that people who are non-veterans, I don't think that they're comfortable with this stuff. But we'll see. Only the polls know, I guess.
Yeah. And one thing I forgot to mention, was also Tulsi Gabbard, who's the director of national intelligence, telling us telling us back in March that they weren't close. And for him to say, well, I don't care what she said, she was wrong and she was wrong. Well, why is she still in the position in it? Exactly. If you're going to destroy her credibility, and I'm not a Tulsi Gabbard fan at all.
Exactly.
I'm saying if you're going to have her in that position, and you're gonna kill her credibility over getting intelligence information correct, why is she in the position? And then number two, are we supposed to trust her now with intelligence information, knowing that they're going to be planning to do something to us, right? We don't know what it is. We don't know if it's going to come directly from Iran. And all it takes, and we've said this before, it doesn't have to come from the Iranian government. All it takes is for one of these factions, one of these groups, lone wolves, that kind of stuff. That's all it takes. It doesn't take the Iranian government to try to plan something to attack us in the United States, whether it's here or abroad. It doesn't matter. It doesn't take the government to plan something, right? All it takes is and I remind people, 9/11 happened, supposedly was planned from a cave, okay? Out in the Middle East, okay? Someone living in a cave. We know Osama bin Laden, who everybody should, by the way, go to. If you got Netflix, if you get a chance, go to Manhunt, Osama bin Laden, look at that, and look at President Obama's, like you mentioned before, look at for him to make that call, and that could have gone horribly wrong in so many ways. We didn't lose a single soldier. To get out of there with mission accomplished, really the mission accomplished, right? And to get a treasure trove of information, and to get all of that done. And it bothers me that people don't talk enough about that. It's like, do you understand? And by the way, President Biden was against it. I mean, I'm sorry, Vice President Biden at the time, right. Biden was against it, So it's like you got your right-hand man saying, nah, and he was focused on what happened with Jimmy Carter when he was president, trying to get the Iranian hostages out. We had the helicopter crash and we lost American soldiers. That's what they feared. They feared the same thing was going to happen again.
And we got to keep in mind, Bobby, I just want to look at the compare and contrast, with what Trump just did with what's her name?
Tulsi Gabbard.
And we got to remember that Obama chose Biden as his vice president based on his foreign policy experience, right? Mm-hmm. But this man, who never served in the military, Joe Biden didn't either, but went against the vice president that he chose for his foreign policy acumen, went against him, and he was right.
Yeah.
But yet he never threw him under the bus. And what I want people to understand, like Trump did with Goldberg, whatever lady, Gabbard, like he did with her. And so, but the thing of it is that and I want people to remember the operation security, the patience, and I haven't even watched it yet because I just haven't had a chance. I'm going to. I got Netflix and I'm going to. Yeah. I just haven't had a chance. I've been so busy, but I am going to watch it, and I just want people to remember that, man. Just the patience, the not throwing his vice president or any of his other security leaders under the bus. And this man literally threw someone under the bus for. Look, I applaud her for not for not making sure that she doesn't have a yellow cake moment of the 90s. And I was like, man, this lady is making sure that she doesn't do like Colin Powell and Condoleezza Rice and these other folks and have that yellow cake moment, because it's just not true. And she just told the truth. I believe her any day of the week over I believe somebody who won't even listen and read or even listen to his security briefs every morning, and then they trying to find a way to shorten them and all this kind of stuff just so he, his attention span and stuff. So no, I believe her. And but yeah, just to compare and contrast, man. So yeah,
it's a great, if you get a chance. It just again, like with the White House correspondence.
I'm gonna try to watch, because it's episodes, right?
Yes, 3 episodes.
3 episodes.
Yeah.
I'm gonna make it my business to watch the first episode tonight. I gotta get to it. I've been hearing about this. People been telling me to watch it now for weeks, for at least 2 or 3 weeks, I believe. And I'm just like, I'm gonna watch it, and just been busy. But I'm gonna make it my business to do that, and I'll watch the first episode. First episode tonight. But look, Bobby, hey, look, man. Once again, man, great episode. Great guest, great candidate, man. I think he's gonna do great things in the West Metro of Atlanta, in Mableton, very fastly growing city. And we look forward to having more local, candidates on, and this will be candidate season, and we will almost end up turning into the candidate forum, on these platforms. But at least now we have 3, and we can maybe kind of spread them out a little bit. But anyway, again, Bobby, great episode once again, man. Close us out, brother, and I appreciate you.
Thank you. Once again, we want to tell everyone, catch the local lookout with Rodney and Bobby. It's the first Thursday of the month at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Local lookout, first Thursday of the month, Bobby and Rodney, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So until next time, we'll be on the lookout. There's always a lot happening between now and next month. It's a ton. So it'll be more in August, I'm sure, as it comes forward that we can talk about. But until then, everyone be safe. God bless, and have a good evening.
Peace, Bobby. Have a safe trip out west, man.
Thank you, brother. Appreciate it.
Hey, family. Check us out on Spotify or wherever you get your podcasts. Do you have a show idea or want to be on the show? Shoot us an email at blackmansroundtable@gmail.com. And please, like and follow us on social media.